Yeah, Jess. You know what's there,
That's
don't you?
right. Jess knows it's time. Folks, hopefully you know it's time. It is time to talk mules and donkeys. My name's Dave. This is Steve Edwards. Every week we get together to talk mules and donkeys. March 23rd, 2023. No exception. We're here. You're here. Mules are hopefully out in their individual stalls, right? Right? Hopefully out in their individual stalls and not out at pasture. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that today. Hey, it is good to have you here. This is the Ask Steve show where you get your mule and donkey questions answered every week we talk. This week we are chatting more about, you guessed it, mules and donkeys. If this is your first time ever hanging out with us, we do want to welcome you and just say it is good to have you here. We're so grateful that you're spending a little bit of your time with us today. And just to get you acquainted with how things work around here, I want to let you know there's really only 3 things that you need to know. The first is we want to know that you're here. So put your name, where you're watching from, and what the weather's like in the comments section. Matter of fact, you'll probably see folks now at this point in time starting to put their name, where they're watching from, and what the weather's like in the comment section. So that's the first thing. Second thing that we ask is that you let us know any and all of your mule or donkey questions. This show is 100% directed and guided by you. We've got a few questions that folks have sent in over the course of the last week, but by and large, the bulk of the questions come from you here and now. Now, if you are watching on a replay, it's really good to have you here. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we hope that you'll go back into our YouTube or our Facebook archives and see that there's several hundred of these shows that you can go and get acquainted with. It would be awesome to get to share with you all of the amazing questions folks in the past have asked. And if you've got your own, go ahead and ask it. Third thing that we ask, and this is the last thing, and this is really the only thing that benefits us, is that you share the broadcast with friends or family, whether that's taking the link and sending an email or tagging a friend or family member in the comment section. That's really all that there is to do. 1, name, where you're watching from, what the weather's like. 2, ask any and every mule or donkey question that you got. And 3, share the broadcast. Steve, it's been a week. What you been doing? You said something like been like clipping and plumbing or something like that.
And then weed eating. Man, we got the weeds are 3 foot tall, and it just, about the time I get out there and I spray and I cut, and I barely get spray and cut, and then we get another rain, we get another load of weeds, man. And it's a fiddleneck weed, so it's the only thing that can really eat it is the sheep. And I've only got 2 sheep that Jess likes to work, and so I don't turn them loose around too much because we got a lot of bobcats. Anyway, hey, you were talking about got your mules in a stall by themselves. Had a gal in Wyoming send me a picture of her mule in her stall by itself, but she says she has to share it with a friend. And right next to her is an elk, a cow elk.
Elk?
Yeah.
How'd she arrange that?
In Wyoming. Well, hey, that elk likes. Here's what's kind of unique about the elk and the deer. We used to set up camps at different places and have our tents in and this sort of thing. Well, there'd always be road apples on the ground from them mules. Well, them mules would have a little bit of grain left in their road apples. So them elk and deer would actually come right into our corrals and eat the road apples. So we didn't have to go very far to shoot them.
So folks, Steve talks about how the rain comes out here in the desert and it just makes everything grow, and it really, really does. Let me see if I can share my screen here. This is on the I-10 out here, and normally this landscape right here is brush and rock and dirt. But with all of the rain that we've gotten out here in the Southwest, you can see it is not just rock and dirt anymore. No, it is it's lush, and out by Queen Valley where Steve's at, that's the way that it goes. It's green growing up all over the place. It's beautiful. Makes a booger for cutting weeds, but it is beautiful, and it's real fun to look at and experience and enjoy. So great. We're glad that y'all are here. We've got Barbara watching, Steve and Dave heading home from work, sunny and 57 in Sullivan, Missouri. Polly is watching from Barnesville, Minnesota, 20 degrees, had snow again this morning. Oh my goodness, it's still coming down. Debbie is watching from Iowa. Merlin is watching from northwest Minnesota, where it's 16 degrees and sunny. We just got a dusting of snow this morning, but it's over now. Valiant, Oklahoma, 63 and sunny is where Sean's watching from. Hey, Mr. Dave O'Brien is watching from East Texas, where it's 61 and sunny. And we have, what we got there? What we got
Dave
there?
O'Brien sent me some honey.
Ooh.
He didn't send me very much because it's almost gone.
Oh, my goodness. Dave, you've got homework. You have homework after this.
He asked me if I like honey. Now, he sent me this about 9 days ago. Do I like honey? Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. So, Dave, you are excused from the rest of the program. Go find the bees and, we'll see you here this next week, next time. Yoav is watching from Israel. Well, not really, but Yoav sent us this in from Israel. Notice how he taught his mule to ground tie. Steve, what are we looking at here?
Now, his name is Yob.
Yob, there we go.
Yeah, Yob. And I went to Israel. He said, would you come to Israel and help us train our mules? And I said, yes. So one of the things that I tell you all that I want you to do, and all the time I hear this kind of thud when I say, they say, well, I got to tie him. No, you don't have to tie him. Watch this. Watch this. He just cued the mule to stand there. Does it have a halter on it? No. Does it have a come along on it? No. What's it doing? Wait a minute. Yob's walking away. Now watch this. Walking clear behind the mule, and the mule is staying right where he's supposed to stay. Folks, this is groundwork. You don't have to depend upon a halter. Now watch this. You didn't hear it, but he just called him over there. You see that, folks? That is what is called, that's it right there. That's ground training. That is when I tell you to stand still, you stand still. Folks, listen. The name of the mule's name is Paddocks.
Did you hear that?
Yep.
Yeah, there you go. Just called him over.
Now, folks, notice he cued the mule. You all didn't see it, but I know what he does. Cued the mule to stand still. Notice, out in that pasture, there is another horse out there with him. You see that over on the right? See, there's a horse over there. That mule wants to listen to one thing only, and that is the herd leader in that pasture. Not that horse, that mule. Now, when I went to Israel and was training these guys and these mules, when they went into the arena, those mules were dragging them into the arena. They were scared to death of them mules. They couldn't pick up their back feet. They couldn't hardly ride them. It was a mess. Now watch it. Look, he's walking and that mule is following him when he cues him. You see that? Now he cued him to stand still. Now he cued him to move over. So I say this, at the end of the videos that I've got, those guys were standing on top of their mules, on their saddles, waving the Israeli flag. Those mules were so tuned in, and this was less than a week of training, folks. I mean, we were hyper training on these mules. I'm telling you, folks, you're leaning too much on the horse stuff. Too much on the horse stuff. We need to focus on, you have a super intelligent animal, a donkey and a mule, okay? Though they're great animals, you can teach them that you are the herd leader. Do you see that? Now here's Yob in Israel, and this has been, what's it been now? 7-8 years ago that I was there in Israel training. And these guys, I mean, these are stout young guys, and these are good mules. I mean, big old stout mules. Most of these mules they raise themselves, But by the time I was done, they were picking up all 4 feet, okay, and not having to hold on to them. The mule's just standing still out in the middle of the arena. Now, let me get something across to you, folks. I'm not one for dog and pony shows. You heard me say I had these guys stand on top of their mules and wave the Israeli flag. They had a little flag, about like this. The reason you stand on top of a mule, okay, or a horse, okay, and this is tradition. Most of these young guys don't understand this tradition, but the tradition was when a twister, which was a horse trainer, when a twister finished a horse and it was ready to go to work, the guys would all stand around and get ready and listen. The twister, the bronc buster, would stand on top of that horse at the end after he demonstrated the mule, the horse in this case, side passing, turn on the forehand, turn on the hindquarters, picking up all 4 feet, loading in a trailer, taking a rope and roping a calf, okay? All the basics that the mule needed, all within a 10-foot circle. You heard me talk about 10-foot circle, folks. Now I'm going to add some more to your information. That is tradition. It's what the bronc busters used to do. When they had one completed and done, they give that demonstration in a 10-foot circle. Then they stood on top of it and they shook their rain jacket, sat back down on the mule or the horse, slid the rain jacket across the top of his head and walked off. Guess what? The horse was still standing there. If he was well trained, as that twister was showing and demonstrating to everybody, they did it within a 10-foot circle, less than 15 minutes. If you go look at a mule and you want to just go out for a ride, you're wasting your time. You're not seeing a finished mule. You're not seeing a trained mule, okay? All you're seeing is a mule that these folks want you to see, and that is you think you can sit on them and ride them. All you're doing is being a participant, sitting in the saddle, and your pack equipment going down the trail. That does not show you what you are paying for. And a lot of you are paying for big money. You heard me talk about one of my clients, Nancy, who paid $18,000 for a mule, and she spent another year paying a trainer to train it to get its mind back. Yeah, we're gonna interview her one day, Dave. So there you are. That's my little 2 cents worth thrown in, buddy.
Awesome. Very good. Glad to have it. Next question that we got, well, actually, first question. This one's come in on an email. We've been telling folks about the Montana Clinic that we've got coming up here in June, and I'll put a link in the comments section. But Catherine wrote back and said, what I want to know, so we're doing, are you listening to your mule? What she says, my mule is tripping. Why is he putting his nose down along the ground? So that's what she's trying to listen to. What is he communicating when he's tripping and putting his nose down along the ground?
Okay, so that tells me he's in trouble somewhere in his front end. And until I done some tests on him, I really wouldn't know. But okay, folks, of course, we always go to the feet first. If he's tripping, we look to see if there's anything in the hoof that's tripping wise. If he's tripping and you don't have any shoes on him, put shoes on him. Don't listen to these folks who say you don't need shoes on mules. They have the second worst hoof in the equine world. What's the first worst hoof? The donkey. It is a sorry, contracted foot, okay? And that goes right into that mule. Is it a pretty decent foot with a mule? Yeah, because they equip it with a donkey. So let's go on. So I would make sure, and if that's not right, I would call a vet out, and I would x-ray around the coronet bone. That's just above the hoof. So it's x-ray for ring bone, x-ray for coffin bone contraction right here. So this right here is the outside wall. This is the lamina, white line, and this is your coffin bone. And so it could be rotated back because of poor trimming and shoeing. Okay, so that's the next thing I do is I'd X-ray that. X-ray. They can do testing with the hoof tester, and they can test it that way too. And then here's the big one, folks. And I tell you this because, like today, I was looking at a lady's mule. She sent me a picture of it, and you can see a white spot on both sides of the scapula. That is from several things. Number one, it's a horse saddle banging into the scapula because horse saddles are more pointed, banging in the scapula. Number two, no breeching. That's the second thing, no breeching. And that without a breeching, the saddle gets bumped into the scapula. The third thing, yep, you got it, no rear cinch, or front cinch is over tightened and the back cinch is barely tight. Okay, folks, you're riding a mule, and it's imperative that back cinch, that's your most important part of these saddles. Most important part. Okay, so why is it tripping? Call your veterinarian out. Once you've had your shoer come out, he's got a hoof tester. He can test it. And then the next thing would be, let's do some x-rays on that scapula. And we'd be interested. Let us know. I'm always interested to see why, okay? But I'm going to tell you, when a mule drops his head that much, now does he buck at all when you put a saddle on? Does he run off with you at all when you put a saddle on?
Whoops, wrong button. That would be a question. Catherine, get back to us. Let us know. I'll push the right button when you get back to us. I'll make sure to push the right button. It's just a ever so slight. I've got two teeny tiny buttons, Steve. They're about this big and they're right next to each other. And by golly, I think that's the only time I've ever slipped and pushed the countdown one. But let us know, Kat. That's it. I'm fired. I'll see you guys in the next life. Michelle is watching. She sent in a message on Facebook Messenger. Says, we have a 2-year-old gaited mule. I've been feeding him grain because he is a growing youngster, but this morning and last night he stopped eating it. He looks his normal self, pooped in his stall, but should I be concerned? Should I not feed a growing 2-year-old any grain? And that's from Michelle. What would you say, Steve?
Folks, turn the grain off. They don't need it. Here's when they need grain, okay? They need grain when you are in training. If you are getting ready to go on a good ride, 3 or 4 hour ride, get them whole oats, let them eat all the whole oats they can eat while you're saddling. That will give them the energy, and that'll keep their top line going. These babies, folks, don't need all these high carbohydrates. They don't need the grain, okay? And especially if you're feeding them a crimped oat, that crimped oat is for fattening. You don't need, they already can get that together, no problem at all. Just feed a good quality hay, and that's it, okay? Should you be concerned? Yes, you should be concerned, because if a mule quits eating grain, there's a problem. And usually what it is, we're starting to get colic is starting to set in, and you could have a colicky mule. So no grain, folks, especially sweet feed. I had a lady email me, and I talked to her on the phone, Dave, and she had they had fed her mule grain 2 days in a row, and she thought, what in the world? Why are you changing? Just a vicious thing, and crazy. And kind of find out they had grained the mule, and that's what had happened. And then the other 2 mules that they have, they're wagon mules, and those mules, they feed them grain all the time. She says they cannot control them, Steve. They're crazy all the time. Folks, you don't need to be feeding grain unless you got a lot of work for them, okay? They don't need the carbohydrates.
Next question. This one come in from overseas, one of our friends, Muhammad. He says, I have a problem, Steve. I cannot mate horses with donkeys or vice versa. I need an explanation of the correct way. Are there any ways to do that? Greetings. So what would you have to say to Muhammad just as far as it comes with breeding?
Okay, So he's trying to breed a horse to a donkey, it sounds like, because that must be his stallion. Or is it Muhammad? Is it because your Islam religion won't allow you to do that mixture? I'm not quite sure why. Because anyway, so let's go back. Most horses do not breed donkeys. They just kind of refuse to. And so usually we AI them, artificial insemination. On a rare occasion, you'll have a horse that would breed a donkey. Because I think before you had asked me how it was to have. I lost the name of it. Zap. How about that? Henny mule. Okay. I think that was one of your questions. What are henny mules like? And a henny is a cross between the daddy being the horse and the mother being the donkey, instead of the mother being the horse and daddy being the donkey. Because the jack will breed either a donkey or a mare mule pretty readily. But I can tell you this, that if you try to breed a jack to most donkeys, once they started breeding donkeys, they won't go breeding over to mules at all. I mean, to horses at all. They actually will refuse to breed. So going back to the breeding position, folks, here's my position on this. Always AI, artificial insemination, gets you a quality animal. Artificial insemination, you know the date that the mule was bred, so that you can get an idea, instead of field breeding. The downside of free field breeding, well, there's lots of downsides. I won't go into it, but so Muhammad, let me know. Is it because you have a stallion that will not breed your Jeanettes?
All right, Mohammed, let us know. I'd love to hear back from you and love to do what we can to get you the results you need. Moving right along, hopping back over to seeing who's hanging out with us today. Jerry is watching from Indiana, where it's 55. Libby is watching from North Carolina. Rory is watching from Southwest Ohio, 45 and damp. David Pengelly, Mr. Coffee by David himself, the maker of the Come Along Coffee, is watching from an overcast, sunny, but beautiful scenery today. Dave O'Brien makes the comment, wow, you sure do like honey. I'll say that again. Pamela is watching from Whetstone, Arizona, sunny and 78 degrees. Dorsey says, hey, Dave and Steve. Dorsey from Winchester, Kentucky. Little cool today, waiting for it to warm up a little to get ready to restart groundwork with my mule, per Steve, and I discussed a couple of weeks ago. So good to have you here, Dorsey. Judy is watching from Gazelle, California. Snow flurries, freeway closed last night over the mountains due to white out snow. Wow. And it is almost April. BK is watching in Northern California. Actually, BK says just listening. So we'll make sure it's a good audio experience for you there. Tamara is watching from Queensland, Australia, and that means we've gone international. Michelle is watching, says, hi from West Unity, Ohio. Have a 2-year-old gaited, not broke yet, but can lead, clip, pick up feet, and pony him. So I don't hear a question in there. Thanks for asking my question. He was good. That was from earlier. So very good. Thank you, Michelle. Andrea is watching from Altoona, Florida, 80s, partly cloudy. Jack is watching from Johannesburg, where it is 40 and sunny, but winter is still here. Steve, we were talking a little bit before the show, and I wanted to bring it up and ask you, we're working on getting bits in stock, the Trail Rider bits. Of course, we have some in stock that are one size. I forget if it's the 5-inch we have in stock.
Yep.
So we're working on getting the 5.5-inch in stock. And one of the things that we're running to is we got to make sure that it's got the sweet iron. Will you explain to us why that is so important and why you can't just use the bit that has all of the exact same shape, but you need that sweet iron?
Yeah, matter of fact, David, I'm going to quickly email you this picture, and you can see the picture of the sweet iron. There we go. So I'll send it to Blocks. And I'll show
Okay.
you the difference between the two bits. All right, there you go. You should have that. Now,
All right, I'm checking.
here's what's important to understand, folks, is you got a different palate on that donkey, and that goes into the mule. That mule head, even though even a small head, it still has a donkey palate and mouth and this sort of thing. So the bit is going to communicate different with the horse compared to the mule. So I have designed this bit, which Dave should have the pictures of it here pretty quick. And you can see the one on the bottom has dark places on the bar area on the right and on the left. And the one up on top is completely shiny all the way across. So I don't know. Oh, there you go, Dave. I just went back to you. All right. You see that, folks? The one on the bottom is my 5-inch bit. Okay. And I want you to notice that it's kind of hard to tell in here, but in all actuality, the top part of what we call the Mona Lisa head in the center there is actually touching on the flat spot on the table, and the back part of the bit is lifted up. You can almost kind of see that. And what that does, that lays that port back in the mule's mouth to where it's not touching the roof of the mouth all the time. And that's what it does with a mule, is it's always there, and the mule tends to gap his mouth and trying to get away from the pressure. So when they made the bits for me, they made the bottom one correct, and the top one is not. Notice it does not have the dark places on the right and left side of the Mona Lisa, which is called the bar of the mouth, of the bar of the bit. Okay, and it hinges. Notice it hinges on 4 corners. Notice also the top bit is customized. Notice the engraving and things like that. That bit's really a fancy bit, and it's a 5.5 inch. And it used to be that I sold most of my bits looked like that. And then my engraver, we kind of lost him and couldn't find him anymore. And so now, bang, we got another guy that took his place. So we're able to go back to that fancy bit. Okay, it's fancy, but it doesn't. It still does the job you need it to do. Remember, folks, when you go in to your saddle shops looking at bits, okay, they're all made for one palate: horse, not the donkey, not the mule. Okay, it's really, really important now. I know a lot of you say, well, I'm doing okay. Well, you're doing okay today. What happens if one day it'd be like some of my clients, they said we went to stop and the mule kept on going. We tried to go off the left and the mule went to the right. When they're under pressure, folks, that's when you know if things are really correct or not.
Awesome. Continuing on here, we've got Jack, or we already said that. Judy is watching and says, is a mule's mouth different than a horse's mouth?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the palate, the roof of the mouth, okay, is what's really different. It's kind of rounded and it's longer, folks. We have to look at that too. Look at the horse's head and the mule's head. The mule's head comes from that donkey, and some are more than others. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to communicate, folks, okay? And when you're not, when the bit is not setting in the mouth correctly, you are doing some communication, but believe it or not, folks, you're creating more discomfort, i.e. pain, than anything else. You know, I can't tell you how much it's phenomenal to see the difference. I have had custom bits made. I have bought them off of the wall of tack stores. You wouldn't believe the money I have spent in bits trying to figure out what is best for that mule or donkey. And after all these years, I'm finally happy enough that the mule is happy enough, the donkey's happy enough. Yes, major difference in it.
Awesome. Very good. Great question. Thank you, Judy. Next question. This came in from on YouTube. It was a comment left a couple days ago by Texas Viking. Says, I've recently acquired 2 jacks, both Burros, and I can't get a halter on either of them. They are absolutely not cooperating. Steve, is there any hope for these 2 jacks and Texas Viking?
Well, here's the first thing I would do is I'd make sure they're in separate pens and small pens. I don't know how big your donkeys are, but at least 20 by 20. And if they're the mini donkeys, 10 by 10. Now, if you don't have a way to have a squeeze chute, you can create a squeeze chute if you've got about 3 guys and take a corral panel and tie it off on one corner. And then once you get the mule or the donkey to go in the corner, take a rope on the squeeze chute and pull it over and squeeze into it and tie it onto the other corral and pull it tight, and you got him squeezed in, you can hold him. Now, if you don't have that, then my other way is to rope him, okay? And I prefer to rope a hind leg. It's easier on him. If you rope a hind leg, you can control them pretty easy. A front leg is far better if you can do that. Or, in the final thing, go ahead and rope them around the neck and choke them down a little bit. Either way, the idea is to get them to quit moving. And that's it's tough to do. But folks, you have to have your animals when you're training. You have to have them in individual stalls. It's a total must.
Next question comes in from Elizabeth. Says, is the Mona Lisa bit recommended for both gaited and non-gaited mules? So Steve, what is the Mona Lisa bit? And then what would be the recommendation for gaited and non-gaited mules?
So going back and looking at the picture, when I say Mona Lisa, that's the rounded part in the middle. And if you think about in your mind what Mona Lisa looks like, the black hair and her just kind of sitting here like this, that bit, if you open that bit up again, that's called a Mona Lisa mouthpiece, that little rounded bit there. And here's the problem with these gaited folks. Horses, what is that, Dave? Horses or, there we go. Horses or mules, okay? They hold on to the bit and they kick them into the bit and they push them in the bit and hold on to them. You don't need to do that, folks. I have demonstrated with gaited animals time and time again that you don't have to hold on to the reins. Western style of riding is on a loose rein. And all you have to do is get them up into the gait that you want, hold on to the bit, and put them in a gait that you want, and slowly let down your hand, and then that'll release them, and then they will stay in that gait. You don't have to hold on to them and they're arched like this the whole time and prance it out really big. You don't have to do that, okay? These bits can be used on a gaited animal, and they can be used on one that is not. Now, here's the deal. On your mules, they get from their donkey a single foot, and where it makes a really nice walk, a lot smoother than a horse, phenomenally smoother. And so that single foot can also do really well with this mouthpiece as well. I've owned a lot of mules, Dave, that were gaited, Tennessee Walkers and Foxtrotters, and I've trained a lot of them. But most of all, in my clinics, I have demonstrated to people you don't need to hold on to the reins all the time. You don't. All you have to do is cue them, and they'll do proper.
Awesome. Next comment, this came in from Dave O'Brien. Says, I listened to a podcast the other day from someone other than Steve, and the guest speaker recommended a custom saddle maker for mules. Out of curiosity, I went to the custom saddle site and just shook my head. Their advertising picture, in that picture, they had the saddle sitting too far forward. The saddle was not split in the back, and they only had a front cinch. I felt bad for their customers, for their mules. That's not the first time we've heard that. Matter of fact, we've seen Steve's saddles not split in the back, and that's because some folks will buy it and they'll decide to make modifications to it, and all of a sudden it changes the design. Steve, in particular, because we have seen that multiple times, when folks see that split in the back, obviously there's some folks that think it needs to be sewn up together. What's the reason for that? And why is that wind up being a bad deal for the mule?
Well, there's two reasons for it. Okay, number one, that if you see, there's a lot of mules that when their hip comes over and drops down, there are three vertebrae that kind of stick up. And your saddles that are sewed across the back, that are solid across the back, they tend to rub a hole into those uh, backbones. And what that does, it creates a fistula, and it gets really swelled and big, and they end up with a big edema on there. And it's the reason is because they sew up the back end. On a mule, since they're very lateral when they're walking, they move their hips very unique. Okay, and since they do, and since they're very lateral when they're walking, that those hips will burn. It's called burning. You'll see the hair literally wear right off of them. It's not the saddle's fault. In some ways, it's the way the mule walks. So what I did is I took my saddle and I designed it in such a way so it's open in the back and it also fits the slant of the back. I've had people send me pictures saying it's not sitting flat. And I said, yeah, that's right. It's good. That's what you want. You don't want it laying flat on the mule's back because they're very lateral when they're walking, very smooth when they're walking, therefore, and it makes for a very nice ride. But then you're not soring your mule, okay? And then if you only have a front cinch, shame on you. You know, you can call a pig until you see him in the mud. Then you know for sure he's a pig. All right, I folks, you can do what you want to do and spend the money for these saddles that these folks have, and they call them a mule saddle. But how many years have they really been using these saddles on mules? And the next thing is, how many hundreds of mules have they actually had these saddles on? I just had a client, Dave, that sent me he needed a breeching, and he bought his saddle back, what was it, 2014. So you're talking almost 10 years ago. And he said he's had it on a lot of mules over the years. And so he just ordered a breeching. So it's really neat to see my clients still riding their stuff. And then there's some people who claim it's my saddle. Like I had some folks email me and say, hey, I got your saddle. I want to know what you think of it. And they sent me a couple pictures. I said, it's not my saddle. Number one, it's sewed across the back. Number two, it has billets on the rear. That's a long strap on the right and the left side. And I don't use billets. And number three, there's a billet on the right side because I use 4 nylon tie straps to center my cinch. That's extremely important. Folks, your cinch needs to be centered. When you see your D-rings in the center of the cinch, they should all be together. One shouldn't be higher than the other. Folks, well, I had a lady send me a picture, and on one side, the cinches were even. On the other side, one was lower than the other. And I told her to center the cinch. And she was thinking the centering was the 2 cinches being even together. I said, no, center it so that the rings are centered underneath the mule. So that center ring, the center part of your cinch, is on the center of your mule's belly. And that's what lays it down correctly.
Awesome. Moving right along. Hey, Mr. David Scholl is here. That means we've gone international. It's still hot and humid. Hope it's cooler than this in Montana. Susan is watching. Stephen Dave, it's 38 and windy and chilly here. Looking forward for warmer weather in Wisconsin. Eileen is watching. More snow is melting. 37 degrees in Nebraska today. Our ever the present presence in all of our past YouTube videos, Mr. Merlin Olson. Is it true that sweet iron helps the animal generate saliva and keeps him more comfortable and soft in the face?
Yes, it is. That's the purpose of that sweet iron. And thanks for bringing that up, Mr. Olson. And you're right. He's been a client for a long time. That sweet iron helps generate the saliva. And the saliva, the more they salivate, the better, because that is a natural lubrication to lubricate the mule's mouth, and you have to have that. No copper, folks. Copper makes them gap their mouth. I had one old veterinarian tell me, an old veterinarian tell me years ago that copper creates static electricity in their mouth. Now, I don't know how he knew that, but I just know that I kept having a gappy mouth. He said, get rid of that copper and you do good. I got rid of the copper. I done good.
Next question. Actually, Susan is what. Oh, we already said hi to Susan. There's Merlin. Okay, next question come in from James. Sent this in on Facebook. I have a niece going on 7 with a Tennessee walking mule. I've had her since she was 3. Oh, wait, no. I have a nice going on 7 years old. I don't think it's niece. James has got something going on 7 years old, Tennessee walking mule. Nice Tennessee walker mule going on 7 years old. There we go. It was written weirdly. I've had her since she was 3, and she's always ran with a group of mares. She's beyond Buddy Sour. Took her to a horse camp in Missouri a few years back, and when I ride on a different horse that she knew, she'd just stay standing at the gate stall and move her head in circular movements. I could hear her screaming yet a mile away on the trail. Do you think I need to remove her from the group of mares and isolate her? If so, should she be allowed to see the group? Should she be confined without sight of the others? I appreciate your thoughts on this. She's really nice, but can be difficult to ride in groups. When you take away one of the mares, she goes bonkers. Yeah, what do you have to say there towards James?
Sorry, I had to leave. My dog said he had to go outside, so he's going out there and he found a dry spot. He's making wet. Anyway, so let's go back to this again, folks. Don't put your animals together. I know you got those wonderful pastures and this sort of thing, but you're going to end up with just what he's got here right now. Super barns of Buddy Sour. And you can't change it. There's no changing it. It is nature. It is the way the good Lord put into these animals to protect themselves. That's what it did. Okay. And so when you do this, you got to think that a horse is the herd leader 99.9% of the time. And the mule will be very subservient to that horse. Should you put them in a separate pen? Yes. Each one of your horses should be in separate pens. And the reason I say that is because health-wise, you can keep track of the health of each one of your animals. My wife's mule, 28 years old when she died. We got her as a 2-year-old. She spent 26 years in a 10 by 20 stall. And times I did open up where she had a 20 by 20 stall, but she spent 26 years in it. I didn't have all of the problems with a Buddy Sour and all this stuff. I don't have it, okay? Because I in the very beginning, this is the way it's going to be, okay? And so can you put her in a pen? Yeah. Is she going to blow up? Yes. I've got a client right now that has, he says, the mule walks all the time and it weaves back and forth and goes around in a circle and goes back and forth, round in a circle. That's what they do. I want to go. I want to go. I want to be with my buddies. I want to be with the mare that I like. And then you try to trail ride on them or try to go out, it's miserable, okay? Are you going to change it? No. The only way you're going to be able to change it is to be a rider, for one thing, and stay right with it. But take your horses, put them in individual stalls, and change all of their minds. You have to. You got no other choice, okay? If you're running an outfit like, for instance, at Yosemite, yes, we ran all of our mules together and all of our horses together. And when we went and got our horse, each one of those mules knew which horse they liked to be with, and those 5 mules would come over to be with that horse. That was my 5-pack mules, okay? When I put them in line in the pack string, one in behind the other, okay? When I did that, they knew they had their place, and I didn't have them fussing and fighting. But they will set up a pecking order. They know where they need to be, because that is the realm, that is the lifestyle of the equine, and especially with the mule. So if you want to keep that mule, You're going to have to put it in a separate pen. Yes, it's going to be a monster. And I was telling you about the one guy. He said, what do I do, Steve? He walks up and down the corral panel, walks all day long. I said, all right, take advantage of it. Put your surf single on, bid him up with a mule rider's martingale or the halter, and let him train himself back and forth. You can train, okay? Put the surf single on, put the breeching on, put the mule rider's martingale on, and let him train himself. And that'll help him a lot too. But can you fix it? Nope, it's nature. Can you make it better? Yes, by putting them in corrals, but not just the mule only. Every one of your horses got to go into separate corrals.
Awesome. Continuing right along, got somebody who commented on a video that we have online called Is It a Henny? So question about a henny. Is one mule smarter than another? And does 21 have different withers? I don't know what that means. I owned a mule for years until he passed at 30, and he had withers that were comparable to a horse and used Blue Ridge Roper saddle. So is one mule smarter than another?
No. It's going to be as smart as the rider, period. The mule is only going to look as good as the rider. You've heard me talk about what I've gone and done demonstrations with my mules, my personal mules at clinics until I quit doing that. And people would see the mule do everything. And then I'd say, okay, come down here and ride. Then people would come around to ride, and that mule would look like he was dumber in a box of rocks. Well, had nothing to do with the mule, it had everything to do with the rider.
Very good. Let's see here. Susan says, my vet is coming out on Thursday to float my mule's teeth. I heard that mules are sensitive to sedation. Is this true? I rescued her, and she allows me to do a lot with her face now with following your techniques, but I'm concerned that she's not going to be that friendly with the vet. She was sick when we got her, so she was poked a lot by the vet. What would you say here to Susan?
Well, yeah, you're right. They don't get along with vets all that well. I teach all of my mules to twitch, to all of them, and you train from the nose. That's why I teach you to use the come-along hitch and to adjust your halter. So I can tell you that I use a twitch when I'm going to do any type of inoculation at all. I use that twitch. I'm going to do any type of doctoring at all. I'm going to use a twitch. And the idea of the twitch is to create natural endorphins. Do we have that picture of me that's on the front page of that doctoring your mule with me on a helmet and holding on to that?
Yeah, I'll find it here. You keep talking. I'll find it.
Anyway, folks, I create natural endorphins by using this twitch and open and close and open and close and getting the mule to relax and getting the mule to where he's comfortable when I do sticking with a needle or when I do stitching or stuff like that. You know, I use this twitch. It's very natural. It's an easy way to keep the mule quiet because you're dealing with the nose. And that's really important, folks. You have to understand that when you're training, you see that right there? You see that twitch? I use that twitch. That mule in that video, you'll see the video, and it's one I send out called Doctoring Your Mule. And you'll see the mule needed to have his eye doctored, but would not do it. And my apprentice had a hard time with it. So you can see how quiet the mule is now. Look at that. Eyes getting nice, big and brown, starting to drop his head, starting to get relaxed. And I created that relaxation simply by using that twitch and getting the mule to relax. Now I can give it its shots. I can castrate. I can do whatever I need to do with that. It's a wonderful tool, folks. And if you're truly training your mule to be trained right, you need to twitch train them.
Awesome. Let's see here. Hop back over, see who's hanging out with us. Next question. This one came in from Texas Viking as well, watching another video. If you, it's not even a question, it's a comment, and I wanted to get your comment on this, Steve, because I was curious. Texas Viking was commenting on a video we have called How to Shoe Your Mule. Said if you have a farrier that doesn't know the difference between a mule donkey feet or a horse foot, you sure don't want them working on your mule or donkey's foot. Is this true? What's the difference? And maybe even more than those two things, Steve, if I've got a farrier coming out and I'm concerned that they're not going to be able to do things properly, are there questions that I should ask or things that I should look at to make sure they do it correctly?
Well, the big thing to be concerned about is they understand that contraction is a big problem of our mules and our donkeys, contraction of the heels. And that's one of the biggest things that needs to get done. And then the other thing is this, and this is really important, is that when they do put shoes on, they tend to put the shoe on and blunt the front of the foot. So here's my shoe, should be sitting flat, and then the hoof should be coming up like this. And unfortunately, they do is they blunt it off, and the foot ends up being rounded in the front. It should be straight. And then you should also see, you should be able to take a nickel once the shoe is on and go all the way around that foot and have space where that foot should spread out to be able to expand and contract. So should they know something about contraction? Yes. Should they know how to fix a contracted heel? Absolutely. Okay. Can you just put a shoe on a mule? Yeah, you can put one on. But here's the big thing: you put one on and they'll do okay. But when it's put on correctly. It's amazing the beautiful walk that they have. But if they're not put on correctly, it's like you putting on too tight of a shoe, and your foot gets to be sore. The same thing with the mules. When you put on a shoe, you nail a shoe on. You want it to be able to expand on that shoe. And if it's tight all the way around to where you don't see any of the shoe at all, that means that foot is too tight, and you've got a problem with that as well. There's lots of things. I mean, we can go into tons of things. That's what I do in that video.
Yeah. Let's see here. Next question. This one came in from Deanne. She was watching one of our videos. Says, should mules or can mules be kept in separate paddocks?
Yes, and they should be. Now, when you say paddock, what size is it? I personally like 20 by 20 at the biggest. Now, it's okay to have them have a long run. Okay, if you've got a well-trained mule and he's paying attention to you and doing good, it's okay to have, a 25, 30-foot long run and then a area where they can feed and this sort of thing. That's fine if they're well-trained. But if you're training on them and you're trying to build a foundation, they need to be in a 20 by 20 stall.
All right. Next question we got. Steve, do you remember several years ago we had a clinic at the ranch? I'm seeing if I can find the video here. Yeah, I found it right here. We had this clinic at the ranch. Had a young gal, probably about 15, 16, 17 years old, and she came out with her mule, and the mule was wanting to get up in her space. It was a white mule, white gray mule, and so you worked with her, and so I'm going to put this video up here. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Apple gray. Yeah.
Okay. So you've got this mule here, and what I'm going to get at is somebody was watching this video, and they made the comment, I wouldn't be surprised if the mule had nerve damage in his nose now. And so I thought it'd be a good opportunity for us to watch the video and for you to talk about maybe what their concern is and why it really isn't a concern.
There's very, very, very little bit of nerves on top of that nose. Where the nerves are is on the bottom of it. And if you notice, folks, we do very little of hard bumping. After a bit, if you get to where you notice how when I led that mule, I didn't hold on to that lead rope really bad. I didn't hold on to it. And notice this here. When the mule was being kind of tough and running off because she was messing with the nose, notice how loose that lead rope is. You don't have to do much. You barely have to touch it. Barely have to do it. Now, if the mule is a renegade, yeah. But I tell everybody, Don't ever tie with a mule and have him jerk back with 1,000 pounds on the end. It can be a problem. Okay. But now look what I'm doing. I'm teaching her how to keep the mule from rutting. Notice the lead rope is loose, folks. Do you see that? That mule is standing quiet with a lead rope loose. So that person has very little knowledge of a mule's nose. All the nerves on an equine are underneath the chin. And what do you use underneath the chin? You're using a chain or a leather strap to be able to communicate to those nerves. I want you to stop. And if you notice on any of my training, you'll see some sharp bumps at first, but eventually next to nothing. I've never, ever, ever in 50 years of using this thing had any problems with nerves or cartilage at all. Never.
Dave Scholl says, how young of a mule can you start using the Humane Twitch with? And so the Humane Twitch is what we were just talking about. It's the device that looks a bit like a nutcracker. It's got some curves on the end. You grab the nose and you start massaging the nose, and eventually you work the twitch over and you start squeezing the twitch ever so slightly, and that gets them nice and relaxed. How young can you begin using that on a mule?
I usually do it the day that I start castrating them. So it really depends. When both of their testicles are hanging down, then it's time to castrate them right away. I don't wait for a year old or anything like that. When them testicles are down on a mule, I cut them right away, because a mule can be vicious when they have their testicles. They can be horrible. So I pretty much cut them right away. So I try to, when I wean them and I castrate them and I pull out their wolf teeth, I at the same time start training them to that twitch.
Connie messaged, and maybe you spoke to her online or at some point in time. She said she was going to call, but I don't know. She says, I've been looking for the right way to train my new mule, unexpected baby miniature, a Molly mule. I've found a lot of gobbledygook, that's a good way to put it, and not much true sound teaching. I'm afraid I've already made a lot of mistakes. I have no idea how to go about this new challenge. You're the first person I think I can depend on for sound and true advice. She's almost 4 months old and is getting ready to be weaned. I really need to get a handle on this before I have a big problem. What would you say here to Connie?
Start the come along hitch right away, Connie. I use baling twine on my babies. If I can get them when they're coming out of the sack before they get their first mother's colostrum, I usually would put a piece of come along baling twine on their nose to make up a come along hitch, and I will gently take them to the right, gently take them to the left, gently bend their nose down, just kind of move them around, let them feel it, okay? And it's amazing to see the difference. That come along hitch is the most humane I have ever used to start any of my babies or fix any problems. And it works more without having to do so much work. Because you look at the majority of people, their halters that they have on their animals. That halter is misadjusted, it's too high, it's up on bone, and you have to do a lot more work. Now, here's the problem. When it's up high like that, and they want to pull back, they can pull back and snap that halter or snap that chain. We used to have a lot of halter pullers. Don't hardly have many anymore. But when that halter is adjusted correctly, like that come along hitch, you barely have to pick up on it to get it to use. And just like in the video, when you see me come walking up with that dapple gray, you notice I barely had a hold of that lead rope, and the mule was following the sensitivity of that lead rope, the lightness of that lead rope only. Watch most people, they got a big old bull snap on their halter, and they wonder why the mule is throwing their head.
Next question we got, this one came in from Montana Steven, says, until I'm able to afford the right saddle, can I ride him in a bareback pad or something similar?
Sure you can. And we've been emailing back and forth. I keep waiting for her to call me. Here's the problem with not having a saddle is the bars of the saddle evenly distribute your weight on that mule's back. Now, You got to remember the vertebrae look like this. And when you put pressure on that back, what happens? Vertebrae starts opening up. And here's the downside, okay? This is really important, is that especially your babies, we want to start them out right. And we don't want to get their backs to look like a big old U, okay? And so the bars of the saddle, that's the long flat parts that go on the mule's back. Those help safely distribute the weight across the mule's back. So can you do some barebacking? Yeah. Can you use the bareback pad for a while? Yes. But you want to make sure you ride the breeching, because there again, here's one of the problems. That saddle, because that bareback saddle pad, because it doesn't have a rear cinch, it's going to matter a matter of minutes pull that saddle up on top of that mule's scapula. And again, folks, you have the scapula, and then you have that fiber on the top of the scapula, and that's what breaks down.
All right, folks, just wanted to remind you that there's several things happening here. Number one, Steve, what do we got there?
Hey, there's the new trucker hat. Yep.
That's the new trucker hat, y'all. You can get your very own Queen Valley Mule Ranch trucker hat, along with, we've got some additional things on the store. We've got some shirts, even got coffee. So y'all can go check that out. Link is in the comments section. Get yourself a mule shirt or a donkey shirt and a trucker hat with the official Queen Valley Mule Ranch logo on the bill. And if you're curious, we got Marcia there showing us exactly how awesome those shirts are. So many folks have sent that in. That's a lot of fun to see. We really love it. Also want to tell y'all that if you have not registered yet for Montana, you need to do that soon, especially if you want to be a participant. We are down to the last couple spots for the participant option in Montana. And this is where you bring your animal, you get hands-on instruction, hands-on training with Steve, but more importantly, they're your hands being guided by Steve's instructions. That means when you leave, you retain what you learned. You retain what it is you learned how to do. So get signed up. The link is in the comments section. There's still plenty of spectator spots, but if you want one of those last few participant spots, at this point, I think it's safe to say they'll be gone. So buy them before they are. Don't be left with your Queen Valley Mule Ranch trucker hat in your hand. Get that spot while you can. Also wanted to let everybody know that Steve, if you can't get to Montana, because we understand that not everybody can get to Montana come June 2 and 3. Steve, you're also going to be somewhere this fall. Tell us where you're going to be come September, October.
Shelbyville, Tennessee, and I'm going there to help the veterans. I really enjoy spending time with these veterans and helping them out. That's the main reason I'm there. Matter of fact, this year I had one of my saddle companies call me up, and they say, "Hey, Steve, we want to bring some saddles and some blankets and stuff like that there to demonstrate so people can see." So we will have some stuff there that you folks can see. But the main reason I'm there, folks, is to help the veterans, to be able to get dollars and cents to help them out and to help them with their program. And we have Marty Ray there has really tried to put forth a lot of effort. So I'm looking forward to seeing you all. I believe it's in October, isn't it, Dave?
Yeah, it starts September 28th, runs through October 1st. Steve is going to be doing 2 sessions on Friday, 1 session on Friday, 1 session on Saturday, and it's going to be a real special session. Usually when we do clinics, obviously it's guided by the concerns and the questions that the participants have, but rarely does Steve just leave it open for anything and everything. Well, that's what we're doing here. We're actually going to be doing a live, I think this is the first time we've officially said it this way, we're going to be doing a live version of this program called Ask Steve Mule and Donkey Questions Answered live and in person. So that's going to be happening in Tennessee. There's a lot of really great information. Of course, I put the link in the comment section to Steve's website. That will get you to the festival website where you can get even more details. But live music, awesome food, great family experience. You can accumulate a lot of stuff, or you can create a lot of memories. Sometimes it's hard to do both. So choose memories over accumulation this fall. Steve, anything you want to say before we're done?
No, we're pretty much done, folks. Thank you very much for showing up again. Wow, an hour just flew by.
Woo! Woo! Going by real quick. The days are long, the years are short, and the hours go by fast. Thank you, everyone. God bless. Take care. Hey,
Blessings.
Palm Sunday, this Sunday. Palm
coming
Sunday.
Yep.
Here we go. Get it ready.
Blessings.
All right, bye, everyone.
All right.